compared classrooms with nationally board certified teachers, and they did show an increase in student learning and achievement. So it's basically like, what is this? There are 4 components. We're going to be going through each of them and kind of talking more in depth about each of the components. So component 1 is content knowledge. A lot of times you will hear this referred to as assessment center. And you will have 3 constructed response items that you have to write to, and you're allotted 30 minutes to do this, and 45 selected response items. So in my world, that's multiple choice, and there's 60 minutes. 15 of those, however, are test questions for the next session. In component 2, it's the differentiation in instruction. And in this, you will be collecting student work samples, and you will be using assessment and feedback, and then you will be designing lessons based on some baseline information that you receive through those assessments to differentiate instruction, and you will show how you did that and their growth through collection of student work samples. In component 3, this is the big one that is talked about a lot. It's the videotape component, and it is really on your teaching practice and learning environment. So how do you set up your learning environment, both your resources and your physical environment to accommodate student learning. And you will do, generally, most certificate areas do 2 videotapes that are about 15 minutes, and you look at interactions, both teacher to student and student to student interactions, and you evaluate student learning through those interactions. And finally, you have component 4, and this component is about effective and reflective practices. And for this, you are going to set a student need that is either with your class or the whole school. You will have an individual need, and then you will look at assessment practices, formative, summative, and self-assessment, and you will collect data based on these assessments. And this component generally is the component that runs, you collect a lot of data to show need at the beginning of the cycle, and then you implement either you will participate in professional development, you will collaborate with others, you will join leadership opportunities, and then you'll show that throughout the year that your participation as a learner, leader, or collaborator added to the learning of your students. So why, this kind of slide talks about the modification. The modification, I think this is our 3rd year into it. So for most of us now, this is the new normal, but it used to be that you would have only 2 years. You can actually complete candidacy in 1, 2, or 3 years. You pay per component instead of one fee, so it's $475 per component. And each year you pay a $75 registration fee. So if it takes you 1 year, it's $75. 2 years, you pay that $75 again. In 3 years, you pay it for your 3rd year. And they have tried to increase the amount of support through cohorts that is available. So what does Washington State offer? All nationally board certified teachers receive base incentive for $5,593. This goes up a slight amount. It started about 20 years ago at $5,000, but there is a COLA in there. It's pensionable. And it's good for the life of the certificate. Your certificate will be a 5-year certificate. In 5 years, you'll do a maintenance of that certificate called an MOC. And this is the first year for the MOC. And they say it's about half of the work of renewal. And most of us that have renewed took about 2 weeks to renew. And so really, truly, it's just a dipstick, because a lot of people after this process say, I don't know, I can't do that every 5 years. It's truly just a dipstick. Are you still applying the 5 core propositions that you'll learn about in this in your teaching practice? And then if your school is called a challenging school, you will receive, I don't know why it says up to, but you do receive $5,000 annually, based on your FTE. So if you're a 1.0 FTE, you'll get the full $5,000. So elementary, that means your school is at 70% free and reduced lunch. Middle school, it needs to be at 60 free and reduced, and 50, it's in high school, it's 50%. There is a link to the eligibility, but it is based on your October lunch count from the year prior. And your first year bonus you get in December, so they prorated at 60%. If you take out the conditional loan, then they also subtract the money from the loan that is interest-free from your first year bonus. Some school districts do offer other incentives for being nationally board certified in Washington. One of the nice things about becoming certified is that you don't have to get clock hours or STEM. Of course, TPEP hours are not required anymore, but STEM hours. And so you just send them a copy of your certificate electronically, and you're good for your 5 years. Another thing is you can add endorsements. So we've had candidates that want to teach, especially in middle school and high school, out of their endorsed area. And they can achieve this through national board certification without having to go back to school to add that endorsement. And then if you are on a residency teacher certificate, you automatically get your professional teaching certificate. So the loan works in this way. The total cost for all 4 components is $1,900. And you have to pay for your first component and the $75 annual enrollment fee. Then you then you're given the rest of the money for the other components. Even if you are doing this in a 2 or 3 year cycle, you don't have to do this. They'll just spread that. They'll just continue to pay for that for your components after you purchase the first component. So in order to receive that, you have to join an OSPI approved cohort. And the reason they do this is because the success rate of candidates in a cohort is more like 50 and 60% based on the national rate, which is about 20-some%. And so, and our cohorts have had much higher candidacy rates as well. So really getting in with a cohort, getting that feedback from a trained facilitators. All facilitators have to go through training. They receive materials that really direct how they give information, and feedback. You also have to attempt 2 components. You get to choose those components during your first year, and then you could do 1 your second year and 1 your third year, or you can do all 4, or you can do 2 and 2. And so it's just a nice way to be given free money. There's no interest on this loan, so that's why they do it. From a facilitator that's worked with candidates, and Caitlin and I had this conversation. There are several times that people have tried this process on their own, which is perfectly fine. You're not required. You can pay and do it on your own. But then they show up in your cohort the next year when they get the feedback, because there is definitely a way of writing and knowledge and background that you need to build yourself up for this process. So, and then the feedback, you do peer-to-peer feedback, but all facilitators are required to read every candidate's paper 1 time and provide feedback. So that is huge. So you know that someone that's trained, that understands the scoring process, can really look at your paper with a critical eye and give you that feedback before submission.
Hey, Debbie, can I just add one more thing about the loan?
Mm-hmm.
We really do, facilitators really do encourage candidates to use the loan, even if you don't need it. For an additional reason as well, if candidates are utilizing the loan, because it's written into state law that the loan gets paid back out of our bonus, it kind of ties the 2 together in the law. So as long as candidates continue to utilize the loan, it makes it much harder for the state to take away the bonus, which is why, even though it's been on the chopping block many times over the years in the various budget crises, it's never gone away. And a big part of that is people actively using the loan, and then that opportunity, that responsibility to take the payback out of the bonus. So the other thing, even though there's no interest on the loan, do note, I just discovered this, you are taxed on it. So they'll send you that whole first year prorated amount, and you pay taxes on it, and then your HR department will take the loan back out of your check and send it back to the state. It happens at the local level, not the state level. So,
yeah, thanks, Caitlin. Another condition of the loan is the jump start. And this year, the jump start has been reduced to only $50. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to have this little informational session is because there is a jump start you can register for that is August 10th through the 14th. And it's only $50. If you wait and you take a foundations class with your cohort, that class is generally about $90. So some districts have funds that help you pay for that, but you actually get 4 days of information and organization. I just flew through kind of a brief overview of what each component was, and they really do a deeper dive to help you plan and start thinking about specific lessons you can use, specific students, and what those students might look like. And so it is really beneficial to participate in the Jump Start. So very briefly, National Boards was built on these 5 core propositions. When you get feedback from your assessor, all of the feedback ties in directly to these 5 core propositions. And when you're writing, there is an architecture of accomplished teaching. So each of your written commentaries, so one thing with National Boards is it's very specific on the length of the commentary. Generally, Components 2 and 3 are each 12 pages of commentary apiece, and component 4 has kind of 3 main sections, and so you do it with forms and then 3 pages of commentary. But you work your way up through this spiral, starting with knowledge of students and your goals and your lesson design. And as you write your sections based on these 5 this architecture of accomplished teaching. So registration for national boards is open now. It opened last April. The nice thing is that your components are not, the fees for those are not due till the end of January. So I know that a few weeks ago I talked to a candidate, and she is not sure if she wants to do full candidacy this year. So she's going to sign up for 2 components and then see how she feels by the end of December. A lot of cohorts are done with at least component 2 by the end of December. And then she'll make her decision kind of based on, especially now with all of the unknown. We have seen an increase this year, and I think that a lot of teachers are thinking, when I've talked to them, as long as I have to kind of reinvent things and change things, I may as well be reflecting and looking at that and writing and looking at what works. Your submission is, you can start submitting in April. Very few candidates do that, but by mid-May is when it is due. And then your assessment center, which is testing, will open from April through June 15th. This year, there were many extended submission dates, and we are anticipating probably the same for this year. So some of you just wanted to know, am I eligible? You have to hold at least a bachelor's degree. You have to have 3 years of successful teaching experience. Yes, subbing counts. Yes, out-of-state teaching counts. Yes, half-time and half-time would equal a full year. So however you put those 3 years, it doesn't have to be in the same position or the same building or the same state. You have to hold a valid teaching license, or ESA if you're a school counselor, and you have to meet any additional prerequisites for your cert area. One important note, if any of you are CTE, you do not have to have a teaching degree for that. You just have to be certified under your CTE area. Then you go to the National Board website, you create an account, you pay your $75 registration fee, you go and you need to decide what component you want to start with, and you can download under component specific instructions off of the certificate page. You can start looking at your component requirements. Again, if you attend Jumpstart, they'll go through this very, very clearly. Caitlin already put the cert areas in. Once you purchase the components, and this graphic is just kind of showing you that you can do it in any order. You need to contact your cohort to find out the order that they kind of presented in. I know a few cohorts. One of the reasons Caitlin came into C-STEP's cohort is because she couldn't do one of the components with the Spokane, so she joined our cohort for that, for the one component that she couldn't access through Spokane. And so getting the calendar of when they're meeting, and of course this year I most cohorts are starting to meet virtually. So they will have Zoom, some distant learning, and then we'll utilize some feedback and hopefully face to face, toward the end of our cohorts. So this is more of a flyer. I was talking to Caitlin, like this is just a lot, and it kind of just goes through the exact slides I just showed you. So, your first thing is make sure that you're eligible, the registration, but know the dates that your cohort is going to start. Understand the process and fees, create your account through national boards, contact your cohort, and then start looking at your component and decide where you're going to start. And some of that will really have a lot to do with where your component, where your cohort starts their component.
Debbie, I've got a question that was sent to me privately in the chat that we should probably mention.
Awesome.
The question is, are cohorts meeting virtually this year? As people are trying to pick a cohort, that's an important question, because if it was 100% virtual, you could join anyone you wanted, no matter where people were located. But did you want to talk about our tentative plan and what the trend in the state is going to look like?
So most of the cohort facilitators are starting out virtually, and so they're going to do at least their first 2 or 3 sessions virtually. And then when it comes to the feedback, the last 2 will be, we're hoping, face to face. We have had a few opportunities to engage in some professional development that kind of centers around what feedback might look like. But we're still strongly encouraging you to join cohorts that are cohorts that you will be able to physically get to, and just even knowing the community. I know that, a lot of times we just talk about changes in our community. You have to know your students, the community, the culture. And so it's really nice when you are with other candidates that are in a similar culture that you are. It doesn't have to be the same. Another common question is, will my cohort have all my same cert area? And the answer is no. We, in none of Washington State, there was one cohort of several years ago that did run with one cert area. But what we have found, and I know I listened to several cohort in Arizona and Mississippi, they actually have statewide people that help with cohorts, and they even said they have found to be with cert areas that are not like yours really helps you answer questions in a way that stays away from a lot of jargon or assumptions, or it really helps when you have somebody look at it with a critical eye that's not enmeshed in it. The exception to that is the assessment center, but there are ways of connecting you with other people that have your like cert for some of that studying. And there's just a lot of resources that Washington offers as far as just guidance in studying for that. So right now, cohorts are going to be, my understanding is most of them are going to be opening virtually.
I had one other comment, Debbie, about the Jumpstart, the registration already being closed for the next session. The link that I dropped into the chat has Jim Meadows' email address at the bottom, and he feels really strongly about PD and wanting people that want to be there in. So if you send him an email, and I haven't specifically talked to him about this particular event, but I'm a trainer for him with other events. He has a history of letting everyone in the wait list into trainings anyway. So the email at the bottom of that link is who you should email to beg to be let in.
Yes. And he definitely numbers. We just finished a Jumpstart last week, and there was over 200, and I think there's only about 100. So I know they're actually looking for more people, but it's exciting that some of those numbers are up. So yeah. So there is a page on the National Board website. So if you haven't been, it's nbpts.org. But if you want to access the COVID-19 updates, right now they will show you kind of some revised deadlines. And then if you wait for your component, if you extend your deadline, then your scores may also be extended. And that's sort of what the message that people got this year. And so that they really do keep that updated. When it first started, the COVID, the information was pretty slow for this year's batch of candidates on how to defer or how to get the extended, but I think they've had time to kind of get things out there now. So having that bookmarked probably would be a good thing. So we've talked about this, that you can take 1, 2, or 3 years to submit all 4 components. However, you do have 5 years to complete this process. So if you submit all 4 components within 3 years, and maybe there's a component that the easy way, it's kind of, the scoring is kind of complex, but it's on a 4-point scale, and your floor score needs to be a 1.75. However, if on the assessment center you have a lower score on one part and a higher score, but it still averages to 1.75, you don't get that part of your assessment center thrown out. That's the floor score. Your score has to be about a 2.2 or so, the math teachers have told me, all combined. So let's say component, and they're all weighted a little differently, but let's say component 2, you get a 1.8, and component 3, which is weighted more, 30%, you get a 3 or a 3.5. They'll take those together, and then if your cut score is about a 2.2, that's how you certify. And they have a lot of graphs to show kind of what you need, but it is on a 4-point scale. We're always looking at a level 4 when we write, and that is our goal. And Washington State has really learned a lot of what they're looking for and how they assess, and the rubrics that they use to assess, which is taken straight from your level 4 standards. Okay. So in your 5th year, you're going to do an MOC, and that will just help you renew. In fact, before it was called renewal. And so they also have some information on that. But the test of MOC has been occurring the last couple years, and the people that have been through it have said that it is a, you don't want to say easy process, but much less rigorous and time consuming as this initial certification. So the support, like I said, the August, I guess it's 10th through the 13th, and it has in the past, when it's been face-to-face, been about $200. You could get a grant for, I think, half of that previously, but because there isn't travel and food and other people's travel to pay for, they have knocked that down to $50. There are the cohorts, and then at the end, you have the opportunity to participate in what we call home stretch, and it is an opportunity to meet with candidates in your certificate area and do peer-to-peer review, and that is also a statewide event.
And Debbie, can I just interject
Yeah.
about the Jumpstart and the home stretch? Those are put on by WEA, and some years in the past they've had non-member prices. It looks to me, from what I've been able to find, that they're just not allowing non-members to participate in Jumpstart.
So yeah, you're right. And so in response to that, the regional coordinators, September 10th, we will be putting on a presentation really similar just to what the national boards are. But we have outlined, and your cohort leaders will have that calendar. In fact, we met yesterday and put everything on a calendar. But we are going to offer a little bit. In the past, we've offered all of our kind of professional development toward our facilitators and then had them push it out to their candidates. We are going to do some direct work with our candidates to help that gap, because we have just learned that there are areas, whether it's just regional, like without unions, that they join. It's just a smaller school district or some of our private schools. And one of the things national boards is not a union situation. It is a teacher situation. So any teacher, whether they're involved in a union or not, need to be able to access some professional development. So we're going to do a little bit more of that kind of thing this year through OSPI, because we're not affiliated with the union.
But Debbie, to be clear, that does not replace the requirement for the conditional loan of either Jumpstart or foundations.
Right.
So
right.
if you can't go to Jumpstart either because you just can't or you're not a WA member, the regional coordinator session will help you get started looking at your instructions, but you'll still have to pay and participate in a foundation session through an OSPI approved cohort.
Right. And so a lot of people say, well, how, and each cohort is a little different, and the cohort leaders can tell you. We on our paper we have it's around $200 for candidate support, maybe $220 or whatever for components 2 through 4. Component 1 is a little bit less, and now foundations is $90. So some candidates say, well, how do I pay for that? Each local school district has things that are bargained, and we worked, CSTEP worked with some in the Padilla School District, which is also a school district that is really small. And so their support didn't come through a union bargain contract. It just came from a conversation that they had with their principal and some support people, and they offered them some support. If you are in a district that has a union, then in your locally bargained contract, a lot of times you will have money and support. So if you don't know what that is, there is a page, a one-page document that has a list of all of those. Caitlin and I went through a little bit of that, and some of it I think is not totally up to date. It is what has been submitted to OSPI. That's what they give out. but you can also call your, you know, any of your union reps or president and say, you know, what kind of funding. Most schools allow for teacher resource funds to be used to pay for cohort. A lot of schools have some release time they give for taking assessment. Some even have release time for videotaping. Central Valley has a pot of money that they share between all of the candidates. Some will actually pay for some fees. So that is a school district by school district thing. Anything, Caitlin, that you?
I just dropped the link into the chat of the not so sure if it's updated link for all of the potential benefits or support available from your districts. That's what OSPI has on file. Also, if you are in a situation where there isn't anything already offered in your district, there is a lot of research out there showing the effectiveness of board certified teachers and their impact on student learning that's quantifiable. And if you would be to email Debbie, she could probably send you a link to something about that with some of the statistics on it, on how much it improves student learning outcomes to have nationally board certified teachers in the classroom. So that's something you could take with you when you go approach your principal or superintendent or director or whoever might have a pot of money that they could loan you some out of. So other than that, I think I've answered most of the questions. Some of them were sent to me privately, but I was trying to get to them as quickly as I could. So we were going to go into breakout sessions, but we are a pretty small group. Why don't we let Margot introduce yourselves, and then if we do need to break out, we can. Otherwise, we can stay together for question and answers.
Yeah, that sounds great. Hey, Margot, you want to do a quick Shwela introduction?
Yeah, I'm Margot, and I am the facilitator for our cohort in Shwela. And looking at the names on the screen, I'm not familiar with any of these names, but it's possible that we have somebody from our area in attendance here besides me. So yeah.
Okay. And one thing, we decided to record this, Margot. So if you do have anyone, or you want to say, hey, here's some quick links, and you can get a hold of this recording and share that. Or if anyone else has that, we can do that as well. So what would any of our participants, are there any questions that you'd either like to put in the chat or? I'm
going to go ahead and stop recording so your questions won't be included in the video that we post on the internet. So thanks for this presentation so far, and we are here to answer questions.